Welcome into the Sunday side session. I'm Mike Schaefer with Husker 24/7, and today I am joined by Tom Shatel, longtime columnist of the Omaha World-Herald, and we are going to be breaking down Nebraska's 28-10 win over Purdue. Tom, I got to ask you, what if you can go back? You can go back to what you were thinking. Let us into your brain at halftime. 0-0, Nebraska on the road, facing maybe the worst team in the Big Ten right now in Purdue. No points, 3 missed field goals, an angry Matt Rule on the sidelines, an offense that doesn't quite look like it's clicking on all cylinders, and a special teams that really emphasizes the word special with how they played in the first half. What were your thoughts at that time?
Well, yeah, I thought I would. My thoughts were, what in the world am I going to write on this one? Because we've seen everything the last several years, and this would certainly be a new low. And I thought, yeah, they've got too much talent to lose this game, but they kept getting penalties and kept, uh, just letting Purdue hang around, and I was prepared for the worst. This would have been the worst. I kept thinking. I mean, the season might almost be over if they lose this game because you know what it's like around here,
Mm-hmm.
and you know what it would have been like if they lost to Purdue all week, and you know, uh, Rutgers won't be easy, and it's not going to be easy. Even after they win, Rutgers is kind of the classic Big Ten. Um, we will make you beat us team, and you're going to have to work to beat us. And the atmosphere wouldn't have been good. And then you go to Indiana and Ohio State with USC left, and that just it might have gotten ugly. So I was thinking, okay, this can't last, right? This something that they've driven down the field and probably should have had 14 points at least on the board. Um, but not having a kicker. I mean, that little thing is so big. It just if you can't kick a field goal, it just plays with everybody's mind. You have to be that much more perfect. You have to Offensive coordinator has to make sure he calls the right plays. You have to go for fourth downs. It's just so it changed a lot of things, but um, I didn't think Purdue. I thought Purdue was going to have to get a, a, a few turnovers and breaks to really win the game. But halftime, I thought anything can happen.
Yeah. I honestly, one of the things during the first half, because I was so focused on how poor Nebraska is playing on special teams or the fact that they weren't finishing with touchdowns, it was a nice bounce back performance from Nebraska's defense. Obviously,
Yes.
Purdue has their own issues and limitations on offense, but you only play the game that you're in. And Nebraska was coming off of a pretty rough week against Illinois. There's a lot of talk that maybe they weren't as good as what people had hoped defensively. Maybe they weren't the same team that we saw against Colorado. All of these different things. They showed up and played really well. I mean, Purdue had 174 yards passing,
Yeah.
72 of which came on that final drive of the game where Nebraska is already up 28-3. And that's not to minimize it, but it's just to say that there wasn't a lot working for Purdue's offense. They came in running the ball relatively effectively. They couldn't do it all, really, against Nebraska. I mean, they shut down Devin Mockabee and Reggie Love III. Again, it's hard because I feel like you have to quantify or qualify so much of what Nebraska does all year with its UTEP, it's UNI, it's now it's now it's Purdue. But still, I thought that was a good bounce back defensive effort. And here's the other thing: they did it on the road. It's their first road game of the year. And while again, West Lafayette is not a daunting environment to play in, I think we can still count on one hand how many road wins Nebraska has over the last 3 seasons. So it's not like they're
Right.
really adept at going on the road and coming out with victories.
No, that, that was definitely one of the high points of yesterday was the defense came back, and yeah, it was Purdue, but you and I ran on them. So I felt like the tackling was back. The outside pursuit, they weren't getting outside. They had a couple of injuries now in the secondary. They had to overcome that. I just felt like it was the energy was back, and the pass rush was getting back there. The one play, I thought, man, I saw this against Illinois, where the quarterbacks scrambled and he started to run toward the sidelines, and then the defenders came up to get him, and he threw a pass over him, and the guy scored a touchdown, and it was called back because of, I guess, offensive pass interference. And he didn't. I thought he stepped over the line, but it was called pass interference. Whatever, it was called back. I thought, man, that was like the Illinois game where they had him on the ropes, and they were just a step ahead. They had it, but they escaped that, and I still see this thing as kind of fragile, and I was glad they didn't score that touchdown because this team might have started to get tight again. So it's I really thought yesterday helped, Mike. I really thought being in a close game, overcoming it. Yeah, it was Purdue, but yeah, it's Nebraska. Nebraska, people see Nebraska as a team that they should beat. So this thing of saying it's got to be built. It's got to be, and they needed to overcome that that whole thing, but of not being able to close out a game, and so yeah, I just thought it was a good job by the defense, and I'll add also, watching Illinois last night, I feel better about Nebraska because I feel better about Illinois. They played Penn State, to the wall last night, and I thought, that was a good game for Illinois. It's hard to go in there and win, and they had them on the run for a while. So the Illinois game was, I think, we sort of have these impressions of teams that we carry through the whole season, but if people say Illinois, that's a team Nebraska should beat, but that's the Illinois team that might go 10-2. They got to go to Oregon, but they might win the rest of them, and that includes Michigan at home. So that we're going to look back at that, I think, at the end of the year and think that was getting Illinois in overtime was a pretty good deal for Nebraska. I mean, they should have won, would have, could have, but I don't think it was like this terrible loss.
Yeah, I agree with that, especially at the end there. I mean, I came out of last week thinking Nebraska played poorly in a lot of different ways and still should have walked out of Memorial Stadium victorious. They didn't give their best game to Illinois. I thought Illinois countered a lot of what Nebraska did. I thought Illinois looked better than I expected them to. And so when they were able to kind of hang with Penn State last night, I wasn't as surprised by it as maybe some were, but I also just thought it was, another sign that Nebraska played a team last week that maybe some people discounted more, myself included, than they should have. But ultimately, Nebraska has to find ways to stop losing those games, and they're going to get another one of those teams in Rutgers. They're going to get another one of those teams in Indiana. They're going to get another one of those teams in Wisconsin, though I don't think they're near as good, in USC and Iowa. I mean, the only team on their schedule that just stands apart from everybody else is Ohio State. I think that's a really, really tough game, but we don't have to worry about that one. Getting back to Saturday, staying on the defensive side of the ball, I want to ask you specifically about John Bullock and the kind of season that he is having there for Nebraska. A walk-on guy who, sort of toiled under the Scott Frost staff as a special teams player, as an extra defensive back, who's now, been given an opportunity at linebacker these last two seasons. And Tom, for as good as Nash Hutmaker and Ty Robinson have been, for as exciting as Tommy Hill can be on the outside, it kind of feels like the heart and soul of this defense is number 5, John Bullock. And he just makes play after play, week after week. I mean, he was the guy who ripped it out against Illinois in the first half. He was the guy who was all over Shedeur Sanders in the Colorado game, waving to the Colorado sideline. John Bullock's having a pretty sensational season for Nebraska at that inside linebacker spot.
Yeah, it's a fun story. And I was around watching the game last night with a couple guys who are both Creighton prep guys, and they were bragging on him and really having a lot of fun. Just pointing out that he's a prep guy, and so yeah, it's Mike. It's not a defense with a lot of all-stars. It's not a lot of big names. It's kind of an underdog, kind of a grinder defense. There's a lot of guys out there that are what you call good football players, and I think coaching and scheme and opportunity all bring that out of some players, and that's what we're seeing with John, and it's fantastic. It's guys like that are kind of why we watch college football, and why we love it. There you can have all the Heisman poses and all that stuff. I enjoy watching guys kind of come out of the woodwork by the end of their career, and that means that they stayed in one place. They didn't transfer. They didn't quit because of NIL. They stayed and they got better. And then when it was their time to go on stage, they showed up. And I really appreciate those guys. I always have. And it's like I said, it's this is not to stray off the path, which I always do, but this is probably a 6-6. This is a 6-6, 7-5 team, I think. And I don't mean to hold them back. I think it's something you want to run, but I've been telling people that all year, and I picked them to go 7-5, and I had a hard time doing that because they hadn't won 6 in forever, and they're still learning how to win. And and I think the last 2 weeks have kind of showed us that it's got a few cracks. It's got some flaws. The kicking thing you can't predict, but it isn't just the kicking. It's the snaps aren't right. The guys covering the punts aren't right. It's a lot of things here that just aren't there yet. And but obviously they've got a lot more playmakers than they've had, especially quarterback. But so I kind of remind myself of that this is not finished yet. But guys like John Bullock kind of, again, that's sort of the heart and soul of what Nebraska football is all about. And they're getting back to that. Being able to see that to me is like they're getting back to what the program is all about.
Yeah, and he's having a phenomenal year, and the rest of the defense is benefiting because of it. Over on the offensive side of the ball, I'm curious. You've watched a lot of Nebraska football. You've seen a lot of different Nebraska quarterbacks. What stands out to you so far through 5 games of the Dylan Raiola experience of him at quarterback, and sort of matching that up with what your eyes have told you over the years of various college quarterbacks at Nebraska, both that you've seen playing for the Huskers and that you've seen lined up against Nebraska's defense?
Yeah, they're all unique, especially all the Nebraska quarterbacks I've seen. They're all unique in their own way. Dylan is the best passing quarterback I've ever seen at Nebraska, and I guess that includes videos of the '70s. Hum and Ferragamo, Taggy and Bronson. I saw the '80s guys live, and he's the best passer, and he's just a different cat. He doesn't run; he beats you with his arm and his head, and but I just love the fact that he's so cool and poised, in sort of a Turner Gill type way, just in just a total command of every situation. He's not perfect, but he's going to help. He's not going to panic, and that gives off a vibe that I think is going to help this team. It's going to help him grow, and it's going to get him to next season. I think they're going to go to a bowl, and continue gaining confidence. But I just love watching him operate because you know there's certainly not a he's not Mahomesian in that he'll throw a pass left-handed or behind his back or come up with some kind of incredible thing you've never seen before. He's just really good, but he throws a lot of passes we haven't seen before. The things that go over linemen and in between linebackers where he just drops it in. It's just that's fun to watch, and he does that with ease. This is again a guy who has been trained to be quarterback. Way back when, a lot of those kids weren't necessarily quarterbacks. They ended up playing there, or they weren't trained to be quarterback their whole life. I mean, he's had all kinds of guys. He's been to quarterback schools, the trainers. He's had quarterback coaches. He's a modern day young star quarterback in a lot of ways, and but he's his own man too. And what I'm really curious about, and he looks just like Dominic. First time I saw him, I'm just flabbergasted. I think I'm staring around at his old man because he looks just like him, and he has a command of the press conference. That's not easy. You walk in that room, and there's a bunch of us, sitting around waiting to ask questions. That's a tough deal for a high school, basically kid out of high school. High school kids aren't used to doing that. They handle it so well, and he already kind of masters the art of not saying much, and that's great. He's been coached. His dad didn't say much either. I'm just gonna enjoy watching him grow. He's a different kind of quarterback in a different era, but he makes things happen. And I think the way he plays, he's the right guy at the right time. Because this team needs to learn how to win, and needs to need to handle the moment. And I think they have the right guy for that.
One of the remarkable things, you're in this 0-0 struggle. You're obviously not able to get points with the field goals. You're being asked to kind of have to do everything and to account for everything. And yet I can't really think of a lot of throws yesterday, Tom, where he was putting the ball in harm's way.
Right.
There's a fair amount of throws where they're attacking downfield because Purdue was more or less holding on every pass play, and Nebraska was going to get after him for that and make the officials call it. But there wasn't a lot of throws that you see into double or triple coverage.
Yeah.
There wasn't, and I don't know if you watched the end of Oklahoma Auburn. There wasn't Peyton Thorne throwing a pass into what 7 defenders were standing between, the ball and where the Auburn intended target was. And that's a veteran who's played a lot of football.
Right.
We haven't, the 2 interceptions he's thrown were the result of defensive backs ripping it away from his wide receiver and 50-50 calls that could have went the other way. The one throw that comes to mind, and there's been a few, but the one that really comes to mind, Ramir Johnson ends up scoring that touchdown on against Colorado. He just does a really nice job of keeping Nebraska out of trouble. And then you look up and they didn't turn the ball over yesterday.
Right.
In a 0-0 game, and we watched a lot of Nebraska football in the last few years where they have loved to just give the ball away at the worst possible time.
Yes.
Does a nice job protecting the ball. And for a guy who's just in his 5th collegiate game, first road game, first time he's not in the friendly confines of Memorial Stadium. And again, I understand it's West Lafayette. It's 11 a.m. or 12 Central there. It's pretty sleepy. I think that's remarkable. I really do. I mean, what he's able to do in terms of allowing them to stay on schedule is really helpful. And, frankly, it's not like he's able to just lean on this running game to take it off of his shoulders.
Right.
It's not like he can just turn around and give it to Amir Abdullah and let someone just do the work for him. And so Nebraska hasn't been perfect on offense, far from it. But one of the things that really has stood out to me is how well they've navigated a lot of the issues that would have popped up by week 5 in previous years. And that's the turnovers. I mean, it's been nice to see a pretty fluid offensive game flow for the most part. I mean, their worst game this year is arguably the first half against Purdue. Obviously wasn't great. There's times against Illinois where they didn't take advantage of things. They're still putting up points. They're still threatening. They're still moving the ball, and they're not giving it away. And I think that's a really notable thing right now, given where Nebraska's been the last few years.
Yeah, I think a lot of that is true, and I think what Dylan does is he spends a lot of time watching film. He studies opponents. The whole preparation aspect of his. I mean, he puts a lot of time into that. That isn't enough. I mean, you have to have a certain talent or a certain knack to, make split-second decisions on should I throw it here or there, and he'll get better at that. But he's been really good so far. What I liked yesterday, and I couldn't swear he was doing it on purpose, but it sure seemed like it to me, where he would throw down field, and it would almost be kind of a jump ball situation, or he'd throw it at a guy deep who was covered. I think he was thinking the DB is not looking. It's going to be pass interference. So he throws it down there, and he may not have had a chance to catch it, but there's a chance for a flag, and he got it. But every time he got it, I'm just like going, that's interesting. I think a lot of quarterbacks do that. I'd love to ask him about that. Maybe I will on Tuesday.
Yeah, I mean, I think they picked up 70+ yards and penalties, yardage, and that doesn't reflect his passing total, but essentially they're able to get 300+ yards passing because of it. You're able to move the ball down the field, and so taking advantage of defensive miscues is always nice to see out of your quarterback. Staying on the offensive side of the ball, Nebraska's sort of three-headed, and with apologies to Gabe Ervin, I don't think he's at the level of the other three-headed rushing attack. Do you think that they can survive this year just trying to figure out game by game which of Dante Dowdell, Ramir Johnson, or Emmett Johnson can be the one for him? Because Emmett Johnson kind of took over in the second half, and there's some people who felt like if they would have played him more against Illinois, it would have been beneficial.
I think it's a deal where they've got three good options, and I think whoever's hot, give it to the hot guy. Yesterday it was Emmett. Ramirez been hot at times. I think against Illinois, but Dante has been really good too. The problem is we never see it enough. They don't establish the run, and I don't have a lot of problem with Satterfield's. The way he's called plays. I mean, yesterday the running game was Ja'Cory Barney for a while there, and it's just okay. And I think sometimes these things are kind of designed to loosen up the defense and loosen up the box. But I think Purdue was a team that everybody's run against. I can't wait for them to just run over Purdue over and over, and they never did until the second half. They kind of started in on that. They started hitting some runs, but I was kind of like, well, you have this obvious thing here and you're not doing it. So maybe part of that is offensive line wasn't getting a great push when they did run. That's another thing that's kind of work in progress, and they're certainly beat up with the backup tackle in there yesterday starting. I just. It's not perfect, Mike. It's still not perfect. Not going to be perfect. But somebody, you look at Satterfield, he's got an offensive line that's it's better, but they've got guys out. You've got a freshman quarterback, new receivers, new backs. in some cases. I think he's trying to make it work. But I'll tell you what, just win, just win. I like to complain about play calling like everybody else, but at this point, Nebraska football's where they are. Just win, and I don't care how it looks. I really don't. Yeah, special teams aren't good, and this isn't good, and this deal and that deal. But they're 4-1, and they're learning how to win, and winning is fun. So this is fun, and but I think it's just going to get better. I really do. But yeah, it's the run game, the offensive line. It's run the damn ball. I love that guy. I love the hat. I love the shirt. But my deal is the thing this year ought to be protect the damn ball, because they have been. They didn't turn the ball over. That's one thing I didn't write about. I hadn't talked about. They didn't turn it over. That's a minor miracle, and we've seen improvement there all year. That's what gets me. The first 3 games, I know who they were against, but Nebraska played really, really well in those first 3 games, almost night and day from last year in terms of penalties and turnovers. Yeah, the last 2 weeks have kind of stepped back a little bit. So, but I thought the penalties yesterday, I'll blame them on a horrible officiating crew. But some of those, I'm sure some of those weren't all wrong either. So
Right.
there's still work to do, but they're 4-1. So enjoy.
Yeah, no doubt about it. I do think the one thing offensively that Nebraska can't dial up, and it's just not in the nature of Dylan to do this. And I think it's why they struggled to move the ball as effectively against Purdue. They just don't have that quarterback run game. I mean, I think honestly, if Harburg was in there for portions of yesterday, he would have had a ton of yards. He had 18 yards on 2 carries. I know that was at the end of the game. I think if they would have had some stuff for him in the first half or what have you, and I know it's in the playbook. I think Purdue really struggles with the quarterback run game, and Nebraska's run game, as we've seen. I mean, Adrian and Harburg over the last 5 years have made that run game or 6 years had made that run game what it was. It wasn't so much the running backs. They haven't had like a great running back run game in a while, and I don't know that they will. Really moving forward, I don't know that that's going to be a huge emphasis. We'll see, but that definitely stands out to me. Tom, as we head into this Rutgers game, I don't know if you watched Rutgers on Friday night against Washington, or if you've seen them much this year. To me, as I kind of said at the onset, feels a lot like kind of a classic just Big Ten game. Like they are a tough-nosed team. They're going to try to defend every inch of the field. They're going to try to attack you right in your face with their running backs. They've got 2 pretty good ones, and they're not going to I don't think they're going to dial up a bunch of passes. I don't think they're going to ask Ethan Kaliakmanis to try to go win the game. They're going to try to do it with defense, special teams, and running game. That was kind of the thought from Illinois with a little bit better quarterback and passing game. I think it's going to be a pretty similar game on Saturday against Rutgers as what we saw against Illinois.
Yeah, it's what you're going to get in the Big Ten, and these guys are classics. They're so well coached. Greg Schiano, man, he was the hottest coach, national guy, a national coach of the year, probably by 2006 or 7, way back then. And then he went to the NFL and kind of flamed out and came back. He's a hell of a coach, and but yeah, this is a team that I think they're gonna have to play a very good defense up front. They're gonna have to stop the run. It's a John Bullock coming downhill kind of game. Nash up front, in the middle, but yeah, Rutgers is not a high flying, high scoring. If Nebraska can get on the board early, that does not bode well for the Rutgers offense is not going to come from behind. You're not going to get into a shootout. So, but you can't turn it over, and you can't have a bunch of penalties. I think Rutgers is going to have a lot of big plays, but they're gonna test you. If you want to beat us, you have to earn it. That's their whole mantra. Not unlike Iowa in a lot of ways, or the old Wisconsin. You want to beat us? Here's how we play. Go right ahead and try. And so I think it's a good matchup. But again, to get to 5-1, you're gonna have to up your game, every week a little bit more. And so it's an opportunity. It's a home game. It's a game you got to win. You got to win the home games. And if they win the home games from here on out, they're going to go to a bowl. They're going to have at least 7 wins. So they got the road win. So, but yeah, there's a lot of different kind of teams down in the Big Ten, and Wisconsin's changing over to the other side now, and it's just this. You're going to see a lot of different versions of teams in the league now, and but I like them at home. I think the crowd will be into it, and I want to see Nebraska's defense do that again.
Yeah, it was a good full game performance from Nebraska's defense. I think if they play somewhere close to that against Rutgers, it's going to be a good result for Nebraska on Saturday. Tom, appreciate your time here joining me on a Sunday morning. I know you're a busy man. Appreciate 30 minutes of your time here this morning. People can catch all of your great work at Omaha World-Herald or the omahaworldherald.com. Columns. You do video now. You've become a local TV reporter of sorts.
Just call me Tom Burgundy. Yes. I'll be it's amazing. We do all this stuff now. I trained my whole life to write, and now they want me to talk. I said, why do you want a guy who stutters to talk? They podcasts, videos, Channel 7. Yeah, come on. Okay, I'll do it. It's great. But the world is changing, and everybody loves things like this. It's great. And so I'm happy to do everything. It's like I've always said, this job I have, it sure beats working. So go Vikings today. They got a big one.
I appreciate that.
I like their defense. Boy, I like their defense. And, the quarterback, good quarterback play and defense will take you a long way. So, but anyway, Chargers, I like their coach. They play the Chiefs. They won't beat the Chiefs. Not yet, but there are too many injuries. But I like the identity that Harbaugh is trying to create. But as long as number 15 with the Chiefs was playing, nobody's winning the West except them. So I understand that and accept it. And I'll rip for the Dodgers this week. So big week.
Yeah, big week ahead. Tom, appreciate it as always, and appreciate you being willing to jump on with us here on the Sunday side session. Everyone, yes, absolutely. Everyone, catch everything we got going on at Husker247.com. Plenty of coverage from Michael Bruns, Brian Christopherson. They were on the scene yesterday in West Lafayette. We've got all your post-game analysis, and of course, we'll have all the stuff leading up to Rutgers here on Saturday. All right. For Tom Shatel, who's now departed, I'm Mike Schaefer. Appreciate you joining us here on the Sunday side session. Please like and subscribe if you are on YouTube, or give us a subscribe wherever you get your podcast content. We'll be back later this week with more podcasts. We'll have the Husker 24/7 podcast. We'll have the Hypecast. And sounds like someone's going to be filling in for me on the Sunday side session. I don't know who it's going to be. I don't know who their guest is going to be. I'm excited to listen to that after Nebraska Rutgers. We'll catch you later with more Husker 24/7 content.